Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another podcast episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. My name is Mark Kotrovsky, and I'm here with Sergey Kotrovsky. We do this on a weekly basis. We're co-owners of Mira Coffee Roasters. We come on here, have some good chats about some chats. That came out oddly. Chats about coffee, all things. And yeah, we are always starting the podcast off with some batchy, as you guys all know who have been around here for a little bit. Today we're going to dive into, last week we did kind of part one of this 2-part series that was birthed very last minute. But then we're like, hey, this topic actually, instead of doing one episode, we can actually do 2 because there's so much to talk about. Last week we talked about being a barista. How can you provide as much value as you can? How do you grow in your coffee career? How do you become a successful barista or get to where you want to be in the industry? Hopefully a place where we touched up a little bit on that you're getting, getting paid sustainably, that you're getting your needs met and you're kind of goal oriented and you have a direction you're going into. If that's something you're interested in. So if you work in the coffee industry, especially if you're a barista, go back and listen to the episode right before this. Today, we're going to be taking apart a little bit more focusing on the management / owner side of probably mostly cafes and roasters, but you might be able to probably actually might be a little more universal than that. So
yeah, I think the major part of the last episode was the focus on longevity. It's like if you want to be a barista and you want to be in the game for a long time, like how can you set yourself up for success in order to do that?
100%, which is not an easy task, I'll tell you that. So
Why is it already so cold?
I don't know. Yeah, it's not hot at all. It's pretty cool.
It's Kenya?
Yeah, I mean, it tastes straight up like a Kenya. There's no hiding this. You could easily taste this and guess that this is a Kenya.
Speaking of, excuse me, man, got stuck in the windpipe. But speaking of flavored notes like grilled pineapple.
Is that on there?
No, so close. Oh. Stewed raspberry. That's nice.
Like raspberry jam. Like right before it cools.
That'd be stewed.
Wait, is this stewed? No. Dude, I'm not a jam maker. That was just what I thought.
I'm trying to parse the difference between a stewed raspberry preserve, and a raspberry jam.
Yeah.
No, marmalade is orange. I'm trying to think. That's curious. I'm at a loss of words. Honestly, I'm just thinking through all the flavor notes that are on bags. Like there was one company that put like biscuit, and I'm like, is that a roast defect or is that a flavor, or is that both, or is that a flavorful roast defect?
Some coffee should have the flavor note potato on there, but they don't. I think there's a lot of, let's just say there's a lot of flavor notes missing on coffee bags that should be on there.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, that's fun. Well, this is a coffee I picked up when on my trip to Europe. I'm still actually finishing a lot of those coffees off. This is a coffee coming to you from Fried Hats. I went straight to the cafe, straight to the source. Actually had my experience at Fried Hats was exceptional, dude. 10 out of 10. The baristas were phenomenal. The service, the vibes, the experience. Dude, they were selling $3 geishas on espresso. I was like,
that sustainable?
Literally, the guy was like, I was like, what do you have on espresso? The guy's like, oh, we have this fun, like a couple of these options, and then we can do like some geisha on espresso. And I'm like, oh wow, how much does that cost? He's like, like $3. And I'm like, what?
US bucks?
Yeah. Dang. And he looked at me. He's like, wait a second. Is that too much or too little? And I was like, that's a steal. A geisha would cost like $8 $8 for a shot of espresso in the States. So ended up ordering like 5 different coffees while I was there. But this Kenya was actually really good at their cafe. That's why I picked it up. But also, I mean, right now, it's not bad. It's very solid. But I think it's like a classic Kenya. Like currant, tart, some fruit. Rhubarb.
I'm admiring this little message. It says, this bottle will never biodegrade. That's honesty. I like it.
I reckon.
Please refill, reuse, and recycle. Or return to us. I like that. That's nice.
That is neat.
Fun stuff. Good design. I like it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting design. Yeah, stewed raspberry, rhubarb, and tart lime acidity. Yeah, honestly,
it's great.
Very classic Kenya flavor profile. But I'm not mad. It's
good.
It works.
It's
solid.
really nice.
Yeah.
It has nice textures too. I don't know if that's your brew or what's going on there, but it's nice. It feels so good.
Nice and juicy. Actually, honestly, I've been really enjoying our brews on the Breville. On the Breville brewer. It's probably the cone that made the world of a difference, but it's nice. These are really great brews.
I'm just like, why hasn't Breville never sponsored us yet? It's only episode 119.
Yeah, or Ratio.
I mean, we've never used a Ratio on the pod.
It's true.
That is incentive for Ratio to displace one company and, place their name in, but they're probably not even listening. So
missed opportunities. Listen, and speaking of missed opportunities, if you're like a really bad business owner.
What a segue. I thought you were going to say something about our coffees, that our Rojas is running low.
Well, before we do that segue, and I did not mean that, the owners of Ratio are bad business owners. That was not at all. That was more a joke. Please don't take that to heart. I genuinely actually love Ratio.
Same.
But that being said, yes, we have maybe like 2 weeks left of 2.5 weeks of maybe Jorge Rojas, Colombian, our honey process Colombian. You guys, I've been receiving so much good feedback from people. So much. Like a lot. Like I had a buddy text me. He's like, dude, this is probably one of my favorite coffees I've had this year. Literally, the Instagram post today was like, hey, Katie. One of my favorite coffees of the year. And I know that's like, those are big, bold claims, and you might be a more seasoned home barista, and that might not be the case for you. But trust me, if it's not your favorite coffee of the year, it's gonna be high up there. Like, I don't know. I freaking love the Colombia Jorge Rojas. Any thoughts on it?
Well, I thought you were gonna make a bold claim and say, if it's not your favorite coffee of the year, you're gonna give them a 100% discount. I was like, what?
Do we do that?
Like,
do we do that? What's so bold?
Yeah, I should ask our other employees about what they think about that.
Ask our other employees?
Yeah.
We need a team meeting.
We need a team meeting
here right now.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know, dude. I've been loving it. I've been enjoying it. It's great. I'm glad we picked it up, and it's already out the door. It went pretty fast. We have a few more coffees that are dropping very soon, so that should be should be exciting. Another Colombian and a few other fun gems. Some classics are coming back, which is going to be fun. Some relationship coffees that we've been serving year over year. But yeah, that all being said, speaking of literally business owners and people who own coffee companies, this question was spurred out of this concept of sustainability. Like, how sustainable is it to work at a cafe? Will you get paid sustainable wages? And then also not just sustainable wages in the cafe. Going back to what we always talk about is, how do we make it more sustainable across the whole supply chain? So like, how can producers not get kicked to the dust? And by producers, I'm going to caveat, I'm not talking about like Alita State, Panama.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like Diego Bermudez and, you know, the people who are like, they're
famous.
They're, you know, I'm talking about like the other 98% of the producers that, you know, you don't hear about over and over and over and over again. How do we make all of that fair? And I know that's a very big, lofty goal because the world is oftentimes very unfair. And then when you do make it really, really fair for everybody, it also doesn't, it comes with a price.
Yeah.
And a sacrifice. And I think that's even worth mentioning is that, that it takes resources. Like the very concept of that somebody needs to get paid or there needs to be some money generated or a business needs to grow means that there's a lot of work involved, a lot of time spent, a lot of resources invested for that to happen. And so what are your thoughts on that? How about sustainability, especially around like a cafe, a roastery, and then especially from a business owner perspective? Oh boy, excuse me. Does anything come to mind? Just sharing that.
Wow, where should I even take this? Because a lot of things come to my mind. First, we have to frame up the context and say that we are in an industry that is a commodity-based industry, not commodity quality. You know, I'm talking about coffee is a commodity product on the big scheme of things. It's a very major product in the world. A lot of people drink coffee. So that's the frame of reference. And then our personal frame of reference is in this niche that is called specialty, that has a very unique demographic, that is, how do I frame this, next level to a degree where it's a special experience, it's a special beverage within the frame of reference of commodity. So one, I love, like our friend Lisa Farr always says that coffee has a branding issue, because we can call coffee everything: green, parchment, roasted stuff, things, coffee that's graded 72 to coffee that sells for $2,000 a pound. It's all coffee, right? So when we're talking about this, we're talking about a niche market. And with that said, I think one of the most important things is to claim responsibility within that niche market. So what role do you play? What role do we play when you're a barista? What are you participating in when it comes to the cafe you're part of? If you're a cafe that is a multi-roaster, what coffees are you serving? So taking responsibility and knowing your role is going to play a big part within this conversation. Because when we start unpacking ideas such as, okay, as a business owner, what's my responsibility? And what do I need to do to create a environment, a place where baristas can get paid these wages, good wages, so that they can plan and have a goal and advance their coffee career?
And there's a potential that, you know, if you're a cafe owner or roastery owner and you're like, man, and I think... Again, there's, just like we mentioned last episode, there are, yes, cafe owners that have abused their power, abused their, you know, their status, their leadership. I get that. There's also baristas that have done that same thing,
right,
which is doesn't get talked about very often. But I apart from that, I think actually most people would say, yes, I would love to pay them more. And it's like, the problem is I just can't. I think there's a lot of that where they're just like scrambling of like, man, I want to pay these baristas more, but I literally am not, we're either not selling enough, or man, I'm barely paying myself, or hey, I'm putting my entire life, I don't have a life outside of this because I have to be at the cafe so much just to barely make it and cross the finish line every single month or every year. My P&L barely, you know, gets across. So I don't want to point this as like a, you know, like a stab at owners. It's more like, oh no, this is actually a conversation that I think we just need to have, because if we can build like really healthy businesses that are thriving, it'll actually benefit us. It'll benefit the community, and it'll benefit the baristas themselves in this whole sustainable talk. But also, it'll trickle down even up the chain. We're a little closer because we're literally roasters, but if you're a multi-roaster, then it helps your the roasters you're buying coffee from. And then if the roasters help, then those producers that are selling to the roasters get the benefit of it. So I like to say is like, hey, as a roasting company, I owe it to not just my employees, but for now it's just you and I owe it to the producers to be exceptional on my craft. Like I remember talking with literally Jorge Mendez in Guatemala, a relationship producer for us that we've been buying coffee for years. And he's like, hey, I need to make sure the coffee's good enough so your people like it. I love that. And in reverse, it's like, no, I also need to do a spectacular job showcasing this coffee as a roaster so that I can buy more coffee from you the next year. Like that's important. And so being a really exceptional entrepreneur, business owner, which is already hard, but you have to be a good operator.
Yeah.
That's it. There's, at the end of the day, at some point it's going to trickle back to that.
Yeah. And that's why I said earlier is as an owner, you have to take responsibility for that weight. And I don't want to say that. I don't want it to come off as in almost like this fear-based, like, oh, if you do a bad job, you failed your baristas. It's not like that. But you do have to understand that, hey, there's a team of people that you are responsible for. And when it comes to taking care of them, wages is one thing, right? But there's a lot of value you can provide because we talked about baristas providing value for companies.
Yes.
Now, as an owner, you're also thinking about how much value can you provide for your team? And that's where you take accountability is the folks that are on your team that work with the company. That's your responsibility. And you brought those people in. So you take accountability for the great things that they do, but you also take the accountability for all the challenges that you're experiencing.
100%. And
your job is to provide the most service you can. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the classic quote of not the employee serving the owner, but the owner serving the employees. Something like that. You probably heard that said.
Yeah, I have.
And taking that kind of responsibility also allows you to create a business model that is going to not only sustain the roasting company that you're buying coffee from, but it's also going to sustain the employees that you're hiring. And then you're able to sustain that environment, the place, the vibes for your guests to be able to enjoy coffee year after year after year.
100%. Yeah, you work for your employees. That's I think oftentimes gets not mentioned, but oftentimes also the other case is a lot of even owners don't really think that way and work that way, even though at the end of the day, yes, you do work for your employees. Like if you're a really good business owner, I hope you're taking care of your people like they're your people.
Yeah.
Like they're the ones that are actually doing all the work. And yeah, the reality is they are doing all the work. You as an owner are more of like an operator, like an overseer. And so it's your job to be able to know, hey, what things should we add on? Should we take away? Where can we make things a little more efficient? Where is the most leverage at? What can I put in $1 and get $3 back?
Yeah.
How do I, maybe, we need to spend more time here. Maybe we need to change our entire menu. Maybe we need to rethink our marketing, whatever it is. Like that's your job actually to be pushing this forward. But all your employees are the ones that are actually doing like most of your work. And so I hope that you're taking care of them like they are like family to you. And I know a lot of probably business owners out there probably don't do that, but that's the case. And also on another note, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I don't want to be a cafe owner anymore. I'm glad. We say that all the time. It's just a little over romanticized, but yeah, it is tough, but your people, that's just the pain and the difficulty and the challenges of being a business owner. There's just no easy way out of this.
Yep. And I've had the privilege to work under different owners. And I've seen owners who lead with empathy and lead with that understanding of being like, okay, I know like I have to, walk that tightrope, and like I want my employees to get sustainable wages. I'm doing the best I can. I want to provide all the benefits. Like the heart goes out to my employees. And then also understanding the other side, your guests, and you're like, how can I best serve my guests to have the proper pricing, the proper menu, like you were talking about, all the things, so that when guests are purchasing all of these wonderful products, they're enjoying themselves. So I think it's very difficult to be an owner in the coffee industry, because we're also not messing with a lot of margin. It's a low margin kind of business. It's most of the business owners I know who are in coffee for the long run, they do it because they love hospitality. They love the craft of coffee. 100%. They love what they do. Therefore, they're continually, pursuing this difficult endeavor and not giving up. But the reality is it's hard. It's hard to be an owner in the coffee biz, and leading one with empathy, and then also understanding the business side of things and understanding margins, being able to look at your P&L, read it, and be like, okay, this is where we can tighten up. This is where we're doing great. This is kind of what the future looks like, and forecasting. Those things like don't get enough hype. I think business owners who are continually talking about those things and educating their managers and helping their team understand those numbers, that's one thing. I think a lot of business owners need to get comfortable with sharing more numbers, being more transparent with their numbers, so that employees not only can know how much they're getting paid and why they're getting paid that much, but they can understand the responsibility they carry as a barista. Like, you're part of this P&L. It's not just for the owners to read. It's for me to understand and be like, every single time I'm pulling shots of espresso, why does efficiency matter? Well, we're trying to run a sustainable business that will actually provide for my future as a barista.
100%. I'm glad you tied that back in, because that is the conversation we're having is, hey, how can, like, what role do owners play? And it's a really, really big one, but also in relation to our last podcast, which is like, okay, how do you maximize yourself as a barista so that you can grow into the career or into the opportunities that you want to? I think as an owner, that's also a big key, is figuring out, okay, who do I need to hire? Who are the right people that can push my business as far ahead as possible? We talked about hiring people that are like you, but also finding people that you can hire top tier talent that is actually not like you, but they have a knack in places that you don't have a knack for. And you actually, I think as a business owner, you need to find people who are way better than you at things that you're not good at and you don't have a knack for. Like, a lot of business owners I talk to that are doing decently and that are kind of well off, they always say like, hey, like, all these people, they're just like smarter than me in a lot of their own unique ways. And you as the business owner you're facilitating that. You're giving them a space and opportunity to shine in what they do best. And overall, when everybody does their part, the business can actually move forward. And you're there to facilitate it, give direction, give vision, give movement to this machine. But yeah, I think that's a really big one.
And I was like kind of thinking through what I just shared seconds ago, and I'm thinking, your role also changes as your company grows.
100%.
Because as you start to scale and you have, multiple locations now, you went from maybe 1 to 2, that's a big jump, right? But what if you're like at 10, at 20, and your business is growing? Your role is also changing. You're leading different kind of people, and then you're still bringing new people, and you may not have that front face interaction with every barista, but you do have a responsibility to make sure that the people that you are continually serving and working for, those people are carrying that culture or that energy back into the team, so that it still works as if it's a 1 or 2 location shop, with that in mind. So yeah, as you continue to grow, things do change, of course. But the concepts, these core ethos, these values, all of those things that you've put in place that are going to actually make that job long-term possible for every employee, those things stay the same.
Yeah. And I mean, we definitely can't speak for somebody who has 10, 20 cafes. Yeah. That's just a different ball game. Right. But what I will say though is, for folks who are, maybe you have your first startup, your first cafe, your first roastery, or whatever it is, you cannot ever stop learning. You have to learn. Mm-hmm. And being a business owner is a skill in itself.
Yep.
Like I always remember is like, it's never a good time to start a bad business, and it's never a bad time to start a good business. Since I've heard that, that's been ringing in my head so much. And what that says is, hey, if you can start a good business, there's always a good time for that. And there's not a good time to start a bad business. And actually, oftentimes the variable of whether it's a good or bad business, not always, there's some exceptions, but it's just like how good you are as a business owner. And to be honest, a lot of us, especially in the cafe world, there's not many really good business owners. I'm just going to be honest. Yeah. And that's no shame to anybody. That's just because what you just said is that we get into this because we freaking love coffee. We're like, dude, my little town needs freaking amazing coffee. I love this. I wish there was, some kind of geisha being pulled in my little town, and we don't have that.
Yep.
And so I'm going to step up and take that role. And I think that's beautiful, to literally see a need and go after it. But to be good at what you do, to be good at running a business, you really actually have to spend more time learning how to develop a really strong business model, and being good at that, kind of almost have to step away from the coffee itself to be really good business owners, because that's a whole new skill of actually tackling this whole thing, which sucks to say, because we got into this because of the coffee, because of the love for the craft, for everything, all things coffee. But think about running your business as if like you're competing at USB-C. Just, think about that. Have you put in enough time as you would as like a first place USB-C competitor? Did you put in that much time to perfect your craft of running a business? It's just tough, like, because then, and I think that might be actually why we're in such a weird spot in the industry, is because we've just gotten into this because of the love of it, and not many of us actually love the business owner side.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's very well said. It's also sometimes not as, fun and not big and flashy to sit around and look through and comb through P&Ls and do all of that stuff. But that's also like you said, it's part of the game. That's what you have to do in order to do the fun stuff, and I think part of it is you have to make it fun. You have to enjoy that. You have to find a place where you actually enjoy that kind of difficult side of running a business. Yeah. And then again, what you said earlier about, there's not a good time to start a bad business and not a bad time to start a good business. One of my first thoughts was, well, how do you know when it's a good or a bad business?
Oh, yeah.
Part of what you do is you're taking a risk every day. You're always risking. And then maybe if you, glance back, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that was great. That turned out great. And then sometimes you look back and you're like, well, not doing that again. So you're to a degree risking all the time, and you're always trying to make the best calculated risk. You're not trying to make stupid decisions, but you have to be moving forward. So you are taking 100%. Those risks. It's a difficult challenge. It's a difficult balance. It's a tension. And I mean, as I hear myself saying that, I'm getting pumped and excited, because that's also part of the joy of running a business, is you get to make those choices. You get to try new things. You get to know and discover, like, oh, that worked. I'm going to try it with, this little caveat on this menu, or I'm going to try it in this opportunity. So you're growing, you're expanding, and you're having fun.
100%. And, I mean, also the reality is there's a lot of failure involved, whether you're really good at it or not. I'm not saying that all of a sudden things are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
If you're perfect, like, yeah, things suck. This is hard. It's constant, failure, reiterating, reinventing, reproducing, problem solving. It's just like one thing after another, and you have a lot of these things that we talked about on your shoulders. You're balancing a lot. It's no easy task, and that's why anybody who comes up to me is like, man, I want to start a cafe. I'm like, dude, please don't.
Yeah, totally.
There's way easier ways to make money, I'll tell you that. Yeah. And just owning anything is hard. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
man, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur until they have to do the work of being an entrepreneur. It's not as flashy anymore, is it? Or is it still flashy?
I think it's
still
too
flashy.
Cool. It's still cool. Too cool.
Gosh. I'm like, man, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm like, it's a lot of hard work, I still enjoy it day to day, for sure. Hey, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
This is
living the dream.
Yeah. I will say this is like, whether you're a business owner or you're a barista, having a lot of self-awareness is very important.
Yeah.
And by that, this goes into the currency of not just getting paid. And you mentioned that a little bit from the last podcast, is like life currencies. Self-awareness is so important because at some point you might realize, like, I don't want to be a barista. Like, I actually want to get paid more, and I want to have this career that I know is going to be sustainable for either my family or my future plans or whatever it is. And it's better for you to leave, but have a freaking Slayer in your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, fair. Or be a cafe owner that says, hey, listen, actually, instead of stressing everybody out, including everybody I live with and all my employees and everything, I think the best thing to do is just to hang up, the shirt or whatever, throw in the towel and just be like, hey, like, I'm just going to back to being a barista.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds very counterintuitive. I know there's a lot that you might be afraid of, like, man, what are people going to think? What are all this stuff? But it's like, man, that self-awareness has to be present, because if you don't have that, I think you're going to make your life more miserable and the people around you, wherever you are.
Yeah. And I would add, even if you have to do that, let's say that's the route you want to take, it still wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
Because if you, sit down once, close down shop, everything is kind of done and over with, and you reflect on everything that you did accomplish. You reflect, let's say, on these horrendous failures, and you process that, you internalize that, and then you're able to make new choices and better choices after experiencing that. It wasn't a failure, even though it may seem like at that moment. So, but that does require a lot of self-awareness. That does require a lot of vulnerability. But I believe even in that case, if you have to go that route, it's still a win.
Yeah. And you're going out with a bang. You're going out with a win. Like, that is the win, to walk away knowing that you can actually be better somewhere else. Like, that's called working towards something better, which is progress. That's growth right there. So I can go on for plenty more time, but I'm just going to call it good. Any last thoughts, words?
That's it. I wanted to connect the dots and somehow talk about, a over extracted brew with a lot of dryness left over and astringency, but I just couldn't tie it all back together to that. And I'm like, whatever, it doesn't even matter. Just tasty coffee. This Kenya from Freed Hats. That's my parting words. Yeah,
I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, what are you guys thinking about this episode? What crossed your mind as you're listening to this, wherever you are? Drop it down in the comments on the YouTube. On Spotify, you can also share a few thoughts. We read every single comment. It's kind of weird because we can't respond to those directly in the app, which kind of sucks. Message us on Instagram if you're a business owner and just want to talk shop. Email is always open for for y'all or for anyone. So thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. This was spectacular, and I'm going to finish it off like we always say. Reflect what's good.